And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. You have to excuse me. The moment I started the show, I started having a coughing fit. Now, today is March the 12th, 71st day of the year. Only 294 days remain to the year's over with. Now we get to go do it again. Holidays and observances. It's National Plant a Flower Day. National Girl Scout Day. Alfred Hitchcock Day. The iconic director. National Registered Dietitian Nutritionist Day. My wife was a dietitian for 60 years. And yes, if you try to do the math, I'm officially older than dirt. National Working Moms Day. National Baked Scallops Day. World Day Against Cyber Censorship. Somebody needs to talk to Facebook about that. Alloimmunization and HDFN Day. It's deals with immune responses, how the body orchestrates a defense against certain challenges. It's National No Smoking Day in the UK. It's World Glaucoma Day. World Glaucoma Week. National Science and Engineering Week. National Button Week. National Bubblegum Week. Campfire USA Birthday Week. Girl Scout Week. Flower and Patio Show. Make Mine Chocolate. National Green Week. National Aardvark Week. British Science Week. Ramadan, the Muslim holy month, started February 27th, goes to March 28th. During this holy month, Muslims fast from sunrise to sunset. Universal Women's Week. Healthcare HR Week. Catholic Sisters Week. Patient Safety Awareness Week. Brain Awareness Week. Sleep Awareness Week, National Groundwater Awareness Week, and Pulmonary Rehabilitation Week. Helps individuals breathe better. Now, a number of programs provide support for those with respiratory challenges. Famous people born on this date: Liza Minnelli, Ron Jeremy, Mr. Porno himself, and Mitt Romney. March 12th is part of National Colon Cancer Awareness Month, National Athletic Training Month, Veggie Month, Developmental Disability Awareness Month, National Reading Month, National Women's History Month, Greek American Heritage Month, Red Cross Month, National Sauce Month, National Nutrition Month, National Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, National Flower Month, National Noodle Month, National Brain Injury Awareness Month, National March into Literacy Month, National Celery Month. The Great Daffodil Appeal symbolizes hope. International Mirth Month, Poison Prevention Awareness Month, National Crochet Month, Color Therapy Month, Workplace Eye Wellness Month, Adopt a Rescued Guinea Pig Month, Youth Art Month, Sing with Your Child Month, Read an eBook Month, National Ethics Awareness Month, Malignant Hyperthermia Awareness and Training Month, Gender Equality Month, Exotic Winter Fruit and Leeks and Green Onions Month, Academy Awards Month, Berries and Cherries Month, Honor Society Awareness Month, National Plater Recorder Month, National Social Work Month, National Small Press Month, National Hemophilia Awareness Month, National Peanut Month, National Credit Education Month, National Caffeine Awareness Month. Ever notice how you don't get that morning buzz just from coffee? You also find caffeine in tea and soda and even some chocolates. It's everywhere. National Umbrella Month, Frozen Food Month, Supply Management Month, March for Water, Expanding Girls' Horizons in Science and Engineering Month, Spiritual Wellness Month, National Optimism Month, Middle Level Education Month, Gardening, Nature, and Ecology Books Month, Listening Awareness Month, Deep Brain Thrombosis Awareness Month. That's DBT, don't you know? Essential Tremor Awareness Month. Mad for Plaid Month. Colic Awareness Month. Trisomy Awareness Month. National Bed Month. Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month. International Ideas Month. Employee Spirit Month. National Breast Implant Awareness Month. Alport Syndrome Awareness Month. Save Your Vision Month. National Brain Tumor Awareness Month. Epilepsy Awareness Month. Endometriosis Awareness Month. National Kidney Month. National Craft Month. National Music in Our Schools Month. And Irish American History Month. Well, on this date in the year 538, Vitiges, king of the Ostrogoths, ends his siege of Rome and retreats to Ravenna, leaving the city to the victorious Byzantine general Belisarius. 1088, election of Urban II as the 159th Pope of the Catholic Church. He's best known for initiating the Crusades. If you forgive my observation, quite a bloodthirsty individual. 1158, German city of Munich, or München as it's also called, first mentioned as Forum apud München in the Augsburg arbitration by the Holy Roman Emperor Friedrich. 1579, this was the start of the siege of Maastricht, part of the 80 Years' War. 1622, Ignatius of Loyola and Francis Xavier, founders of the Society of Jesus, are canonized by the Roman Catholic Church. They started one of the most straight-laced and strict organizations within the church. 1689, James II of England landed in Kinsale, started a Williamite War in Ireland. 1811, Peninsula War. A day after successful rearguard action, French Marshal Michel Ney once again successfully delays the pursuing Anglo-Portuguese force at the Battle of Redina. 1912, the Girl Guides, later renamed the Girl Scouts of the USA, was founded in the United States. 1913, future capital of Australia is officially named Canberra. 1918, Moscow becomes the capital of Russia again after St. Petersburg held this status for most of the periods in 1713. 1920, the Camp Push begins when the Marine Brigade Earhart is ordered to march on Berlin. 1928, California to St. Francis Dam fails. Resulting floods kill 431 people. 1930, Mahatma Gandhi begins the Salt March, a 200-mile march to the sea to protest the British monopoly on salt in India. 1933, the Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt addresses the nation for the first time as President of the United States. This is also the first of his famous fireside chats. 1938, Anschluss. German troops occupy and annex Austria. 1940, Winter War. Finland signs the Moscow Peace Treaty with the Soviet Union, ceding almost all of Finnish Korea. 1940, the most destructive train accident in Finnish history, kills 39 and injures 69 in Turinki, Janakala. 1942, the Battle of Java ends with the surrender of the American, British, Dutch, Australian command to the Japanese Empire in Bandung, West Java, Dutch East Indies. 1947, Cold War. The Truman Doctrine is proclaimed to help stem the spread of communism. 1950, the Landau air disaster kills 80 when the aircraft they're traveling in crashes near Singstone, Wales. At that time, this was the world's deadliest air disaster. 1967, Suharto takes power from Sukarno when the People's Consultative Assembly inaugurated him as acting president of Indonesia. 1968, Mauritius gains independence from the United Kingdom. 1971, the 1971 Turkish military memorandum is sent to the Süleyman Demirel, government of Turkey, and the government resigns. 1989, Sir Tim Berners-Lee submits his proposal to CERN for information management system. It subsequently develops into the World Wide Web. 1992, Mauritius becomes a republic while remaining a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. 1993, several bombs explode in Mumbai, India, killing about 300 and injuring hundreds more. 1993, North Korea announces it'll withdraw from the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons and refuses to allow inspectors access to its nuclear sites. 1999, former Warsaw Pact members, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, joined NATO. 2000, Zoran Dindic, Prime Minister of Serbia, is assassinated in Belgrade. Also in 2003, World Health Organization officially releases a global warning of outbreaks of severe acute respiratory syndromes, or also known as SARS. 2004, the president of South Korea, Roh Moo-hyun, is impeached by its National Assembly. That's the first such impeachment in the nation's history. 2009, financier Bernie Madoff pleads guilty to one of the largest frauds in Wall Street history. 2011, a reactor at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant explodes and releases radioactivity into the atmosphere a day after the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. 2014, a gas explosion in a New York City neighborhood of East Harlem kills 8 and injures 70 others. 2018, U.S. Bangla Airlines Flight 211 crashes at Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu, killed 51 and injured 20. 2019, in the House of Commons, the revised EU withdrawal bill is rejected by a margin of 149 votes. And in 2020, the United States suspends travel from Europe due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And that ends our little history segment. Now we're going to cover a couple of news stories. The Greenland's center-right party pulls off an upset victory as Trump seeks to control the country. According to their leader, people want change. The victory of the center-right party pulled off a surprise victory in the country's parliamentary elections, taking Greenlandic Prime Minister Mette Gedi's party out of power. Independence from Denmark becomes a focal point of the election, and amid President Trump's repeated talk of the U.S. taking control. According to Jens Friedrich Nielsen, the leader of the Democratic Party, people want change. We want more business to finance our welfare. The outlet also added that, this is Reuters talking, Nielsen said Greenland didn't want independence tomorrow and would prefer separation from Denmark to be based on a good foundation. Well, we got some real lunatics we've elected to Congress. An outraged Democrat stopped a hearing after a GOP lawmaker called a trans representative the wrong pronoun. That's more important than getting the job done. Well, Canada's announced $21 billion in new U.S. tariffs as the trade war escalates. Trump put 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, went into effect today. Well, longtime Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen is not seeking re-election in 2026. She represents a key northeastern swing state, New Hampshire, as opposed to Old Hampshire. Well, the hotel where the college student disappeared apparently had some troubles even before she vanished. Federal judge appointed by Trump has quit the group he's a member of, the Federal Judges Association, because there's a move to politicize the judiciary. He said the group condemned recent alleged threats against judges, but stayed quiet for years while conservative members of the judiciary faced scrutiny and attack. Judges have to be concerned about the law, not trying to rule by decree, and that's what a lot of them are doing right now. The cargo ship that collided with the U.S. oil tanker was actually captained by a Russian national. Nobody knows if that has a impact. Well, let's see. Supporters of detained Columbia student arrested after fighting with the NYPD while Trump administration seeks his deportation. You want to come here and protest and cause all kinds of disruption? We don't need you. Protesters are calling Mahmoud Khalil a political prisoner. He broke the law, dummy. Immigration enforcement officials arrested him. He's a permanent U.S. resident. Arrested him on Saturday. He's been removed to an immigration detention camp in Louisiana. Trump's administration is trying to revoke his legal status and deport him because of his involvement in anti-Israel protests on campus. If you go to school, get an education. Don't try to tell everybody else how they ought to be living. Well, Gavin Newsom claims he never used the term Latinx. That's now proved to be a lie. Trump's EPA chief has taken a chainsaw to Biden's green push, saved the country $20 billion in tax dollars. Well, Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender who is claiming to be a poster child and destroyed Bud Light, is back at it again. Democratic senator has been slammed for making insulting comments about Trump voters. Much like federal judges, elected officials seem to think they have a God-given right to express their personal views. That wasn't what they were put there for. They were put there to represent their constituents and make their lives better. Ireland is trying to, it's the sixth largest investor in the United States, and it's trying to develop strong business allies. Well, the so-called desert killer, been on death row for over 30 years, his execution has been blocked by the court. And in looking at the information that was published, I would not say the case against him was rock solid. He spent nearly 33 years on death row, been set to die by lethal injection this week over the killing of 6 girls in the desert around El Paso. Court put his execution on pause till further notice. They didn't give any more information than that. There were 6 bodies that were found and 3 others vanished completely. There's an aspirin could target cancer cells that have metastasized from tumors. Florida spent $660 million of taxpayer dollars on health care for illegals. Hospitals are now ordered to verify the legal status of patients. 67,700 ER visits in Florida last year by patients who came into the country illegally. Well, Bernie Sanders is on another tirade. He's warned liberal podcasters Trump and Musk are creating an oligarchy. He's warned against the dominance of billionaires in politics in previous election cycles. Well, if he's almost everybody who gets elected to office becomes a millionaire very shortly. He's one of them. Now, Alec Baldwin's crew on Rust quit the day before the cinematographer was killed. People don't like to work with arrogance, and he is the poster child for arrogance. Russia just hit Zelensky's hometown. At the same time, Ukraine is saying it's ready to discuss peace. Well, a bunch of rare and mysterious whiskey bottles keep washing up on a beach. The Secretary of State, Rubio, is blasting Mahmoud Khalil's defenders. They claim that he's being deported for free speech. Well, leading protests and occupying buildings is far beyond free speech. Well, on that note, we've come to the end of today's show. End of the news segment of today's show. You know, Rosie O'Donnell has self-deported. She and her 12-year-old child are in Ireland. And we'll see how long they put up with her crap. All right, we've been talking about strange crimes and stupid criminals. We're going to talk some more about that today. Oh, I've got a long laundry list of stupid criminals. You know, Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, elected in 2014. He's been mocked far and wide for not being able to take mockery. Several people, including journalists, have been fired, jailed, or even beaten for the crime of insulting the president. In that country, that is a crime. Here, it's considered after-dinner speech. Belgian Sifsi, a doctor in Turkey's public health service, discovered that the hard way after he posted a Facebook meme comparing President Erdogan to Gollum, the skulking creature from the Lord of the Rings film. At least that was Erdogan's belief when he saw that meme. 3 side-by-side pictures of himself and Gollum with similar facial expressions. He had Sifty fired from his job and put on trial for publicly denigrating a state official. The doctor was facing 2 years in prison if he's found guilty of that horrendous crime. But when the case made international headlines, it caught the attention of Rings director Peter Jackson. In a statement with 2 other screenwriters, Jackson came to the defendant's defense by pointing out that the character has a split personality, one of which has an evil, conniving, malicious presentation. The other has a joyful, sweet presentation. One is Gollum, one is Smeagol. The images are, in fact, the ones forming the basis of the Turkish lawsuit. Jackson said, "We can state categorically none of them featured the character known as Gollum, who should never be confused with Smeagol." Well, to Erdogan's embarrassment, the doctor was acquitted. If he's got that thin a skin, he doesn't need to be in politics. Now let's talk about the infamous Summerdale scandal involving 8 Chicago police officers. 1959, July to be specific, 23-year-old Richie Morrison was arrested for burglarizing a Chicago business. Well, he wasn't too worried about it at first, but when the help he expected didn't arrive, he started talking. He became known as the babbling burglar. He told investigators over the past 15 months he'd carried out a string of burglaries with the help of 8 Chicago cops. Y'all worked the night shift at the city's 40th or Summerdale Police District. It helped plan the robberies, Morrison said, and it even used their squad cars to take away the loot. Well, as you might guess, 8 officers were arrested, and all of them were eventually convicted on various felony charges. 2 paid fines, the other 6 served time in prison. And unlike some other police scandals, Summerdale actually resulted in significant changes to the department, most importantly, the establishment of the Chicago Police Board. 5-member civilian panel that oversees many aspects of police administration, including the handling of cases of misconduct. That board still exists today. And according to unconfirmed rumor, every member of the board is financially well off. Well, just because you're a vicious, degenerate criminal doesn't mean you can't be well-mannered. In January 2004, a man went into the Wells Fargo branch in Phoenix, Arizona, ordered his turn in line, walked up to the counter, and told the teller, "This is a robbery. I need $1,500 in 50s, please." He didn't make any threats, didn't appear to have a weapon. Teller gave him what she had, and he strolled out the door. According to police officer Rick Tamburo, it was like Emily Post does a bank robbery. Very polite the entire time he was there. Well, Nazareno Rodriguez and Sebastian Gallardo, 2 prisoners in Argentina have been accused of robbery, were able to unscrew their jail cell door and make a middle-of-the-night escape. Police were surprised when they later found a note in the empty cell. It said, "We love our freedom and can't live locked in. We're sorry for any inconvenience it might have caused you." Police later said, "They were so cheeky we couldn't believe they left a note. Well, we'll find them." Well, they haven't found them yet. Then another case, a man stole more than $207,000 from a London ATM machine, and 7 days later returned $187,000 of it. Barclays Bank employees found it in a garbage bag just inside their door. One bank spokesperson told the Sun newspaper, "We do offer cashback facilities, but didn't expect anything quite like this." And as Will Rogers once said, "Make crime pay, become a lawyer." Well, one of the most intriguing environmental legal battles took place from 1997 and 1998 between the spring pond beavers of Marnie, Michigan, and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. The beavers, doing what beavers do best, dared to build a dam on Marnie resident Stephen Zvedin's property. Trouble began when Ryan DeVries, one of Zvedin's neighbors, complained about the flooding on his property caused by the dam located on Zvedin's property. The Michigan Department of Environmental Quality responded to DeVries instead of Velton, accusing DeVries of participating in unauthorized activity, specifically the construction of 2 illegal wood debris dams across an outlet stream of Spring Pond. Such illegal activities carried a fine of $10,000 per day. The Department of Environmental Quality ordered DeVries to cease and desist construction on the dams, remove all the wood and brush in time for a site inspection by agents. Well, he forwarded a letter from the Department of Environmental Quality to Veton, and because it was Veton's dam, not his, when Veton received the DEQ letter from DeVries, he responded to the Department of Environmental Quality on the Spring Pond Beavers' behalf. He asked all the right questions. He says, "Was the Department of Environmental Quality discriminating against the spring pond beavers? Were all beavers required to fire a permit before beginning dam construction? And to prove there had been no discrimination, Vinton asked for copies of dam permits filed by other beavers. And he informed the Department of Environmental Quality if they were serious about dam removal, they better tell the proper parties, the beavers. And Mr. Vinton was especially concerned about that the state preserved the beavers' civil rights. Was the state going to arrest the beavers? Would the beavers be read their rights? Would the state provide legal representation? Well, he concluded his write-up by saying, in my humble opinion, the spring pond beaver have a right to build their unauthorized dam as long as the sky is blue and the grass is green and the water flows downstream. Well, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality inspected the site and dropped the investigation after the dam was removed and the beavers moved on to other locations. It is rumored that the beavers returned to Spring Pond, the original scene of the crime, for an encore performance. So I guess you could say the saga continues. And this next story is about a man I wrote a book about, Billy the Kid. Born in New York City, of all places. His name when he was born was Patrick Henry McCarty. And had a wild and tumultuous life. He was actually 21 when he allegedly died. And everyone knew him, said he was a nice boy, good dancer. But he fell under the influence of a man known only as Sombrero Jack. And that association led to Billy's first crime. He was just 16. Stole clothes from a Chinese laundry in Silver City, New Mexico. Well, for the next 2 years, he worked as a cowhand till the day he shot his first victim. It was a blacksmith who enjoyed calling him a pimp. So he started going by the name of Billy the Kid, or William H. Bonney, and a few other aliases. Spent his life stealing horses, rustling cattle, and robbing stagecoaches, and even took time out to kill the occasional lawman here and there. Well, according to accepted history, in 1880, acting on a tip, Sheriff Pat Garrett found Billy and arrested him and some of his gang. Billy was convicted for the murder of Sheriff William Brady. That happened 3 years before. And he's scheduled to be hung. Actually escaped, killed 2 deputies in the process. Well, the state of New Mexico offered a $500 reward. So Garrett set out to track him down. Now, according to accepted history, Billy walked into a dark bedroom and said, "Ken, who's there?" And Pat Garrett shot him through the heart. Well, if you read my book, The Border Escapades of Billy the Kid, Billy had a member of his gang who looked enough like him to be his brother. And Pat Garrett, who very few people knew was a good friend of Billy's, supposedly shot the friend, hit Billy in the head, put him under the bed, and told everybody Billy the Kid was dead. Claimed the reward. Well, according to the research I did, Billy took his illegitimate son, Patricino, and his main squeeze, and left and went to Silver City, where he eventually died many years later. The 2 states, New Mexico and Texas, both claimed to be the final resting place of Billy the Kid. But in actuality, he died under another name in Silver City. Check out my book. You can find it on Amazon. Look for Ken Hudnall, KenHudnall, or you can go to my website, KenHudnall.com. Well, from one of the most infamous outlaws of the Old West, let's go to public enemy number 1, Al Capone. You know, his parents immigrated from Naples to Brooklyn. And Al was born there in 1899. He was a B student till he quit school in the 6th grade. Grew up in a rough neighborhood where he needed to know how to fight. And he joined 2 kids' gangs, the Brooklyn Rippers, and the second one was called the 40 Thieves. And while young, he worked various low-paying jobs, but found he made better money working for the gangsters. Went to work as a gangster, or for a gangster named Frankie Yale at the Brooklyn Inn, where he insulted a patron. Her companion attacked Capone with a knife or a razor. There's 2 different stories making the rounds, which is how Capone got the wounds that gave him the nickname Scarface. Well, by 1918, he had killed 2 men and fled to Chicago, where he started working for mobster John Torrio. And one of Capone's first jobs was actually to kill Torrio's boss. And he was very careful to arrange an alibi for the murder. That was a precaution he continued to observe throughout his career. Quickly became Torrio's second in command. And Torrio was the new boss, assigned Capone to manage bootlegging and prostitution and gambling operations in Chicago and its suburbs. Well, in 1925, one of Torrio's rivals tried to assassinate Torrio. He decided it was time to get while the getting was good. Left the business to Capone. Well, Capone lived large and made headlines, just like a movie star. He controlled Chicago's politicians and the police. And he was an enemy of any rival bootleggers. February 14th, 1929, St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Capone's men and their machine guns mowed down several rival gangsters, what became known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Well, that massacre brought Capone national attention as public enemy number 1. But, unfortunately, authorities had trouble pinning the crime on Capone. In addition to having an alibi, he was also on the Chicago police force. And several of the people who showed up to carry out the massacre were driving police cars wearing police uniforms. Well, finally, an IRS investigator accidentally found incriminating receipts that landed Capone in an Atlanta federal prison for tax evasion. Never could get him for a crime other than that. Ran his organization from prison until 1934, when he got transferred to Alcatraz. And in Alcatraz, he was cut off from his gang in the outside world. By 1938, he was serving his sentence in the prison hospital, suffering from dementia brought on by syphilis. Got released in 1939, retired to his estate in Palm Island, Florida, where he died of natural causes in 1947. Well, between 1979 and 1983, 5 young men between the ages of 14 and 25 were kidnapped, drugged, tortured, and murdered in and around South Australian city of Adelaide. 1984, Bevan Spencer van Einem, an Adelaide accountant, was convicted of committing one of the murders, and in fact, as I understand it, he's still serving a life sentence. And although the police believe Van Einem took part in all the murders, they didn't have evidence to prove it. An anonymous witness who insisted on anonymity because he had been threatened informed police while Van Einem was guilty, he wasn't alone. Only one member shadowed the group of prominent Adelaide citizens, which included lawyers and doctors who used their resources to prey on young men. Other members of this group, which was called the Family by the press, are believed to have taken part in all 5 murders and possibly a number of others with Van Einem. Well, Van Einem never revealed who his accomplices were, though he hinted at a group being responsible, and he was unable to provide further information out of fear. A $1 million reward was posted, and it still stands for information leading to further convictions. Well, the cold case was reopened in October 2008, and despite reported new evidence, no further arrests have been made, and that case is still open. Well, sometimes criminal plots backfire, sometimes very spectacularly. Herbert Ridge built a gas siphoning contraption with an electric pump. One afternoon in October 2012, he was stealing gas from a parked car in East Mesa, Arizona, when the pump spark ignited the gasoline that caught Ridge's T-shirt on fire. He started rolling around in the street, which was kind of amusing to the kids walking home from school. Then he jumped in his pickup truck and tore out. Only one problem with his escape: he was still on fire. And so was his truck. Well, he jumped out of the truck and ran away, but his flaming pickup truck kept on burning and kept on rolling till it smashed into a house and set the building on fire. Neighbors ran out and put the house fire out and apprehended Ridge. He was taken to the hospital and on to jail. So, as I say, sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men go awry, and sometimes with spectacular results. Well, in 2001, two men broke into the home of 71-year-old Faye Olson on the Australian island of Tasmania. They tied her to a chair, they poked her with sticks, and robbed her of 550 Australian dollars, which was $504 in U.S. currency. Police found no evidence at the scene except for a leech. Now, that leech was fully engorged with blood from a recent meal. It was lying on the floor. Police checked the woman and didn't themselves, besides the leech had been attached to one of them, and decided it had to have fallen off one of the robbers. Well, DNA samples were taken from the blood in the leech, and 7 years later, a 56-year-old Tasmanian man was arrested on drug charges, and a routine DNA sample was taken from him and cross-checked against the database. Well, lo and behold, the DNA from the man arrested on drug charges matched the DNA taken from the leech. Peter Alec Cannon eventually confessed to the 7-year-old crime and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. His accomplice or accomplices were never apprehended. Tasmanian police said to their knowledge, it was the first time DNA from a leech had assisted in solving a crime anywhere in the world. And certainly that may well have been true. Well, forensic science is talked about on a lot of TV shows. Now, let's talk about the 1800s edition. You know, forensics is a relatively new official science. It has been centuries in the making. Let's go back to 1813. Matthew Orfila published the first treatise that systematically cataloged poison and their effects. And he got the title as the father of modern toxicology for this effort, although there probably wasn't an official ceremony to award him that title. Orfila was also one of the first to develop forensic blood tests and examine blood and semen with a microscope for forensic purposes. 1835, Scotland Yard investigator Henry Goddard determined that a butler had staged an attempted robbery when he traces a bullet back to a bullet mold owned by the butler. This was the first known example of bullet matching. One of the first actual recorded cases of the butler did it. 1863, a German scientist named Schonbein creates the first presumptive test for blood when he discovered that hemoglobin, oxidized hydrogen peroxide. So mixing peroxide and ketchup will give you an edible ketchup, though it's unclear if Schonbein made this observation, because it all came about when the question was asked about a stain: is that blood or a spot of ketchup? Well, let's go to 1880. Tokyo. There'd been a burglary. An innocent man had been blamed for the heist. In stepped Scottish physician and missionary Henry Falls, who uses fingerprints not only to clear the accused, but also to help bring the actual criminal to justice. And he wrote about using fingerprints for crime solving in the science journal Nature. And then spent the next couple of decades in a nasty little letter writing spat with Sir William Herschel about which one of the two brought up the idea first. Now, Herschel, not to be confused with the other Sir William Herschel who discovered Uranus, finally conceded the point in 1917 that Henry Falls was first. 1892, Sir Francis Galton of Great Britain published Fingerprints, the first book to codify fingerprint patterns and show how to use them in solving crimes. Argentina, police investigator Juan Vucetich developed a fingerprinting classification system based on Galton's work and used it to accuse a mother of murdering her two sons and slitting her own throat to make it look like the work of somebody else. Well, her big mistake, and what was otherwise a perfect crime for the time, was she left bloody fingerprints on a doorpost. Somebody should have warned her about that. Well, let's go to Logtown, Oregon. It's an overgrown ghost town near Jacksonville, Oregon. But back in 1861, it was a thriving mining town until tragedy struck. Mary Hinkle and her two daughters, aged 6 and 16, were killed in a fire. Right away, the locals suspected there was more to it than just an accidental fire. They thought it was a triple murder. The motive, they all knew, was a hoard of gold that rumor had it was hidden somewhere in Hinkle's cabin. During the investigation, a young photographer told police the last thing a person sees before death leaves an image on their retinas. Now, photography was in its infancy in these days, so the idea wasn't so odd. So the photographer set up his gear and took photos of the dead woman's eyes. When the plates were processed, unfortunately, there was no image of a killer. And eventually, nobody was ever formally charged with the crime. Now, the young man who had the brilliant idea was a Swiss immigrant named Peter Britt, who had gone to become one of Oregon's most celebrated citizens. Not only started the grape industry in the Rogue Valley, but also the first person to photograph what's now Crater Lake National Park. And in fact, today, the Britt Music Festival carries on his name. Of course, interestingly enough, the rules of the festival do not allow cameras to be brought in. Well, sometimes people can be absolutely wrong. This particular case, Mark Musarella, 46, of Staten Island, New York, was an emergency medical technician with the Richmond University Medical Center. He was called to an apartment where a 26-year-old woman had been murdered. He took a photo of the dead body with a cell phone and posted the photo to his Facebook page. One of Musarella's friends saw the photo on Facebook and called the hospital where he worked. He was immediately fired. Then he got arrested. He also, a former highly decorated NYPD detective, lost his EMT license. Which just goes to show you can't win them all. Let's talk about Paul Franco, 38, of Queens, New York. February 2010, he hacked the Facebook account of his ex-girlfriend, Jessica Zamora Anderson, changed her password, and held the account hostage, demanding hundreds of dollars for its return. Well, Zamora Anderson had met Franco 16 months before on Facebook. They started dating. She eventually found out he wasn't really a teacher like he told her, but She continued dating him because he claimed he had a tape of them having sex and said he put it on the internet if she left him. Well, Franco eventually was arrested, and Zamora Anderson got her Facebook account back. Investigations showed that Franco didn't actually have a sex tape of the two of them, so he lied to her. Now let's talk about the adventures of the Cherry Sisters, an Iowa singing group. The defendant in this case, it was a lawsuit, was the Des Moines Register. It was considered a landmark libel case. Turn of the century, the Register ran a scathing review of the Cherry Sisters Act. The reporter wrote that their long, skinny arms, equipped with talons at the extremities, waved frantically at the suffering audience. The mouths of their rancid features opened like caverns and sounded like the wailing of damned souls issuing from their mouths. Well, outraged and humiliated, the singers sued for libel. The verdict? Judge asked the sisters to perform their act for him in court, and then ruled in favor of the newspaper. Another interesting case involved Robert Krapinski, 36-year-old Philadelphia real estate manager. The defendant was a Transcendental Meditation Society and the guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Well, Krapinski worked with the Transcendental Meditation groups for 11 years, but finally sued him because he was never able to achieve the perfect state of life they promised and suffered psychological disorders as a result. One broken agreement, he had been told he'd be taught to fly through self-levitation, but he learned only to hop with legs folded into the lotus position. Well, U.S. District Court jury in Washington, D.C. awarded him nearly $138,000 in damages. Personally, I think self-levitation through hopping with the legs folded in the lotus position is quite some achievement. But apparently he wasn't happy. And finally, one of the most famous disappearance cases in history was the disappearance of Judge Crater. Judge Joseph Crater, newly appointed justice of the New York Supreme Court and a potential appointee to the U.S. Supreme Court. Crater and his wife were vacationing in Maine on August 3rd, 1930, when he got a phone call from New York City. When he hung up, he was clearly disturbed and told his wife he had to go straighten those fellas out. And he left to go back to New York City. Well, when his wife got back, she couldn't find him. 9 days later, she called the police and a massive manhunt began. Well, the police searched Crater's apartment and found nothing suspicious, but as the investigation continued, police and the public were astonished to see Crater's carefully constructed facade unravel. Turned out he kept a number of mistresses and had been seen on the town with showgirls. And more surprising was his involvement in graft, fraud, and political payoffs. Also seemed as though he'd be implicated in the Ewald scandal, which involved paying for a city appointment. And there was a lot of evidence that Crater had also paid for his own appointment to the bench. Some were sure he was murdered by gangsters associated with, and others, noting the judge had removed files containing potentially incriminating evidence from his office just before he disappeared, speculated the political cronies that killed him to shut him up. Well, maybe the judge committed suicide rather than watch his career crumble because of the scandal. Whatever may have happened, the assumption was made that Crater was dead. Well, Crater's wife suffered a nervous breakdown and didn't return to her New York apartment until January 1931. When she got there, she found an envelope in the top drawer of her dresser. It contained $6,690 in cash, a prestigious sum in those days. The judge's will, written 5 years before, left his entire estate to her, no big secret there, and a 3-page penciled note that listed everybody who owed the judge money. Closed with the words, "I'm very wary. Love, Joe." Well, the police had searched the apartment thoroughly, and they kept a 24-hour guard on it since the disappearance. So nobody could figure out how or when that envelope had gotten in the dresser drawer. Another possibility, Crater had intentionally disappeared. Whatever may have been the situation, in July 1937, Crater was declared legally dead and his wife collected on his insurance. By that point in time, New York's police commissioner believed that Crater's disappearance was premeditated. Well, the definition of what's a crime does tend to change over the years. During the Middle Ages, murdering a traveling musician was not considered a serious crime. It was considered more justifiable than anything else. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow. And once again, if you're listening to Ken Hudnall and the Ken Hudnall Show, until then, have a truly great evening.